We're now going to go to Zhu. Zhu's from Singapore and she's a working professional lesbian. She's going to share her screen because her room is really messy. And she's going to talk to us about the similar thing, the situation of gender identity in Singapore, Zhu's country. And when did you realize it was a threat? So over to you, Zhu.
All right, let's get down to it. I'll just put down some basic facts about Singapore. We are island city. I promise this is more or less relevant. We are an island city state of approximately 5.8 people. We are mostly Chinese, with the rest of the ethnic groups being Malays, Indians, and others. We are very small. We are only about 728 km squared, which is 281 square miles. It's a lot smaller than most, literally everything. Most of our population stay in public housing, also known as HDBs. And we have national service, which is compulsory for males aged 16.5 years. They serve for 2 years in either Army, Navy, Police, or Civil Defense. So I think on to the topic, gender identity in Singapore. For Singapore, if you want to change your legal name, it's pretty simple. Anyone can do it. It's about $50 to $150 depending on where you go to get it done. But if you were to change your legal gender marker, it's slightly more complicated. You will need a medical examination report form for change of sex directly from ICA, which is the Immigration Checkpoint Authority. This is not available online. And this form must be signed by either an endocrinologist, gynecologist, urologist, or plastic surgeon, confirming that they have examined you and that you have completely changed your genitalia from one sex to the other. So this is something that before you can change your legal marker, your birth certificate cannot be changed though. Only what we call our IC, identity card, passport, and all the other legal forms. So in Singapore, we are pretty much by the book. As long as you have everything in order, you're good to go. Marriage is defined as something between a man and a woman. But if you take note of what I just said, if you had changed your gender marker, you can marry your opposite sex partner, which is kind of sad sometimes because there has been a few people who transition in order to marry their partner, whatever lesbians or gay people. Sometimes they do transition in order to get married in Singapore. So in Singapore generally, when someone thinks of transgender issues, there's two main camps. Most would be the older generation, which the older generation would say, oh, is it transgender like Kuma? Kuma is a popular drag queen who performed in many venues, and he was also on television shows as well. He recently came out as gay in 2019, and I think he's still performing. But amongst the younger crowd, if you say something about transgender, it was very similar to what you hear about in the West. So there's two things I want to talk about, which is in January 2021, which is earlier this year, this post by this trans-identified male student who wants to be known as Ashley. He posted on Reddit claiming that MOE, which is the Ministry of Education, had intervened in hormone treatment, even though that apparently he had parental consent to seek treatment and agreement with the doctor that he could start hormone therapy. Basically, the school does not allow Ashley to have long hair and must conform to the male dress codes, which is pants and a uniform top. The female dress codes for majority of our schools are skirt and a top. This is quite straightforward. So when Ashley posted on Reddit, there was quite a lot of support, mostly from the younger crowd. And following this post, there was a protest outside the Ministry of Education. It was about 3 to 5 people. And of these 3 to 5 people, 3 were arrested, mainly because they were the only ones still there when the police came. You can't protest in Singapore without a license. So that is one quite very recent incident. When because of this, there was quite a lot of talking points exposed. This incident was actually made its way up to the parliament in Singapore, where our government basically said, let's not import outside cultural issues into Singapore. We are conservative Asians, etc., etc. This is quite par for the course for our government. So there's that. In Singapore, I went to research this, and there's quite a lot of transgender organizations. I found about 8 so far, and if you ask me, is there any that is just for lesbians, I think there's one. and I'm not sure if they're still operating. and because of that, Singapore, like if you remember, we are only about 4 or 5 million people, and there's a lot of organizations for them. The main people who oppose this are mainly the older generation, who tend to be more conservative on a lot of things. The older generation also does not really support gay lesbian matters, or even things, depending on where they're from, sometimes they will not support quite a lot of things. And a lot of the LGBT organizations that we have are actually closely affiliated with the transgender community, and outside of private groups online, such as Discord or other groups, I find it quite hard to find an organization that is solely focused on just LGBT issues.
So what affects women's lives in general in your country, and where does your government stand in terms of women's rights?
This is quite a broad topic. I've picked 3 to talk about. So in Singapore, we are pretty much a mixed bag. We have some good things. We have 4 months paid maternity leave. This is, you are entitled to it. A part of it is paid by your employer, part of it is paid by government. The more children you have, the more higher the ratio of government paying for your maternity leave. Marital rape has been criminalized as of 2020. That is just last year, but it's a step forward. And there's actually quite a high ratio of women to men in our local universities. So there's quite a lot of things. I thought I'd talk about some lesser known issues about Singapore that are more unique to Singapore. So 80% of our population stays in HDB, also known as public housing. They are large apartment-sized buildings that range from 1-bedroom studio to multi-generation 5-bedroom. The prices range from $200,000 to $1 million. And the other 20% usually stay in condominiums or landed property. So because it's public housing, the government controls who and how can purchase this. And the most common and usually the only way to get your own HDB flat is to get married, and then you can apply for one. So this is pretty much, there's also other ways to get, but they tend to be sad because it means you have been orphaned quite recently. So the other most common way is to wait until you're 35 years old, then apply for a singles flat. So that means that if you're an unmarried individual, for reasons up to you, you're gay, you're lesbian, you just never found someone to settle down with, you will be staying with your parents until you're 35. And those who are able to move out usually rent a room somewhere, shared with multiple people, or have lucrative careers that enable them to purchase private accommodation. So now we know that Singapore has not much space and all that. And Singapore has a very pro-family stance, which means in order to have the luxury of not seeing your parents, to be married, and when you are married, you are expected to birth as many children as you're able to. The government gives a substantial amount of subsidies to families with children, and single mothers usually do not get subsidies. So in this case, the rights that you have comes with strings attached for this, that your own space is there only if you do your part for the family. If you're single and lesbian, you will never be able to get your place unless you turn 35 and hope your bank has enough for you to pay just singles flat. This is a bit different from what I think most other people are for, but the ability to actually stay on your own is quite something that you don't really think about until you do. And something that's pretty much, I feel, unique to Singapore. Another topic that I wanted to touch on was that there has been quite a number of molestation cases or just general sexual assault cases, and the hands-off attitude that the authorities seem to be taking. So one recent example is of Terence Xiao Kai Yuan. He's a 23-year-old uni student who molested a 28-year-old woman on the MRT. The MRT is our public transport train. About 3 million people use it. This guy tried to run, and he was sentenced to 21 months supervised probation, as the judge said that he has the potential to excel. This guy sexually assaulted a woman, was caught, and he was not given jail time because he had potential to excel. There was a huge public uproar, and the sentence was changed to 2 weeks jail time. Another similar case is Joel Rasis Ismail. He's a 27-year-old student as well, who took videos of female students showering on campus. He was sentenced to 12 months jail and a 1.5K fine. as well as Nicholas Lim, who failed a female student in the shower. He was given 12 months conditional warning, as he was assessed to have a high likelihood of rehabilitation and was remorseful. This was pretty much a joke, as people started saying, oh yeah, if you want to molest someone, make sure you have a straight A's, then you get off easily. So this was something that was quite a buzz in online world. And the last thing I want to touch about on this topic is that FGM is female genital mutilation. It's still practiced in Singapore, albeit within the Malay Muslim community. Not many people know of this, and a lot of women who this were done to actually were not aware that they had been cut. And this practice was actually done by doctors who did not learn the procedure in medical school, but had the techniques passed down to them by other doctors. So this FGM was not many people have even heard of it, and like I said, not many people even know of it. And I would like to bring more awareness to this case.
If you're part of a feminist organisation, can you tell us about it, how it started, recent achievements, and also tell us about other women's rights or LGB groups working in your country?
I'm not really part of any organization. I'm just, like I said, I'm a working professional who happens to be a lesbian. I'll never get married here. I'll never have a house. And that's how I am. But we do have quite a lot of women's rights groups. The most well-known one would be AWARE. They're the Association for Women for Action and Research. They are, if they're the most well-known, as in if you ask someone in Singapore, hey, what are women's rights? They'll say, oh, is that AWARE group. The AWARE also runs a few other things. They have a sexual assault care center, a women's helpline, legal clinic, counseling support groups. Some other groups that I know of is Casa Rautha. I personally donate to them. They are a domestic abuse shelter, which is always something you need in everyone. There's also UWS, which is United Women Singapore. They have initiatives for girls to take up careers in STEM. Then SWCO, which is Singapore Council of Women's Organizations, they have this interesting thing, which is Seeds of Change, which is a new fund to support women's organizations to pilot or scale up women's development projects. They are interesting because they are supported by the Ministry of Social and Family Development Office for Women Development. It's a bit of a mouthful, I don't know why. Other things we have, oh, I forgot to put it in, Daughters of Tomorrow. They support low-income women towards gainful employment, and we have a few more that I think I ran out of space. So all of them are doing pretty much quite great work. Some of the notable advancement would be, like I said earlier, would be the criminalization of marital rape in 2020. Previously also, the definition of rape is only if a penis is entered forcibly into a vagina. Now it has expanded to more definitions. And there's also a white paper which is to be issued by the government sometime this year. It was run by K. Shanmugam, and they are actually being quite proactive. They have held sessions where they consolidate feedback and recommendations between women in the private and public sectors, and they're actually led by all-female leaders. They are led by the Minister of State for Social and Family Development, Sun Xueling, Minister of State for Culture, Community and Youth, Low Yen Ling, and Parliamentary Secretary for Health, Rahayu Masam. This is quite a step forward because the Singapore government tends to be quite a boys' club, and I'm honestly a bit surprised I managed to find 3 women who managed to do it. Other than that, for LGB organizations, a lot of them have trans rights activism somewhere in the background, and I cannot really think of any that don't, other than, like I said, private groups that exist on mostly Discord or other spaces online.